When Dr. Kenneth Walker entered the room at the American hospital in Neuilly, just outside Paris, in October 1949, he didn't expect that encounter would completely change his understanding of human existence. But it was only when George Gurdjieff, lying in that hospital bed, looked directly into Walker's eyes and said, "Doctor, do you know there are 3 types of death? And that most people have already died before they even stop breathing?" That Walker realized he was facing something that transcended decades of medicine. What Gurdjieff revealed at that moment was not just a philosophical theory. It was a brutal dissection of the human condition that he had observed and documented for over 40 years. And it all began with a discovery Gurdjieff made when he was only 19. George Gurdjieff was never an ordinary teacher. He spent his youth obsessed with a single question. Why do most human beings live like automatons, repeating the same patterns until death, without ever truly waking up? It was in 1885, during a pilgrimage through remote monasteries in Central Asia, that Gurdjieff witnessed something that profoundly shocked him. He observed monks who had dedicated decades to meditation but noticed something disturbing. Many of them were completely dead inside, just repeating empty rituals. They believe they are waking up, Gurdjieff noted, but they are only deepening their sleep. This is the first death, the death of the potential for transformation while the body still breathes. That observation became the seed of a revolutionary theory Gurdjieff would take decades to complete: the 3 types of death of man. Over the following years, he traveled from Egypt to Tibet. He was testing a terrifying hypothesis. Most people are already dead in ways they can't even perceive. It was in 1912, when Gurdjieff finally settled in Moscow and began teaching, that he first revealed his complete theory. P.D. Ouspensky recorded this historical moment. Gurdjieff made us sit in a circle and then said something that chilled my blood. "You think you are alive. But I must tell you the truth. Most of you have already experienced at least one of the 3 deaths. And you didn't even realize when it happened." Gurdjieff explained the first death: the death of essence. This happens when a person becomes completely identified with their false personality, their social masks. The original spark, the essence, has died. But it was when Gurdjieff described the second death that the group became truly disturbed. This death, he explained, happens when the person completely loses the capacity for real change. They repeat the same patterns at 60 that they repeated at 30. They don't learn. They don't evolve. They have crystallized in the wrong direction. Ouspensky later wrote, Gurdjieff was describing people who were walking corpses, trapped in eternal loops of reaction, without any real force of transformation within them. And the most terrifying thing, they didn't know they were dead. Gurdjieff developed precise exercises to show people which type of death they were in. His most famous method was the stop exercise. He would shout, "Stop!" in the middle of any activity, and students had to instantly freeze and observe themselves. Most couldn't, reported Jean de Salzman. Gurdjieff used this to prove his point. You are not present in your own lives. How can you be alive if you are not here? But it was the description of the third death that became Gurdjieff's most controversial and profound teaching. This, he explained, was the physical death of the body, but with a crucial difference. For Gurdjieff, how you died depended entirely on how you had lived. If you lived in the first 2 deaths, Gurdjieff taught, then the third death is just the end of a machine that was never truly alive. But if you work to wake up, to create what I call higher bodies, then the third death is not an end. It is a transformation. The writer Catherine Mansfield, dying of tuberculosis, spent her last months at Gurdjieff's institute. Witnesses report that Gurdjieff worked intensely with Mansfield, not to cure her, but to help her die consciously. Mansfield's husband wrote, she wasn't just dying, she was observing death, conscious until the last moment. Gurdjieff had given her something doctors could not, total presence in her own death. Gurdjieff insisted that most people experience the 3 deaths in the wrong order. First they die internally, essence, then they die psychologically, capacity for change, and only then they die physically, but as empty shells. The work I teach, he said, is about reversing this order. It's about waking up the essence before it dies. It's about making physical death not an end, but a conscious passage. The poet René Daumal wrote, Gurdjieff showed me that I am dead in ways I couldn't even imagine. You must die to these false deaths to be able to truly live. When Kenneth Walker returned from that Paris hospital, he had witnessed Gurdjieff dying the third death in a way that defied everything he knew. Gurdjieff was completely present, Walker wrote. He was observing it, consciously experiencing it. I had never seen anyone die like that. Gurdjieff passed away on October 29, 1949, but not before leaving a final message. Remember, you are going to die. The question is not if, but how. Will you die asleep? Or will you die awake, conscious until the last moment? Today, Gurdjieff's theory of the three deaths is studied by psychologists and neuroscientists. His fundamental question remains devastatingly relevant. Which of the three deaths have you already experienced without realizing it? Because Gurdjieff proved something most people don't want to admit. You can be biologically alive yet profoundly dead in the ways that truly matter. The real question is not when you will die. It is whether you will truly live before that. If George Gurdjieff's journey and his brutal yet liberating theory touched you, subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments, which of the three deaths do you recognize in your own life? And what will you do to wake up?